I think one of the only things I genuinely enjoy about these movies is the opportunity to stare at pretty temperate rainforest backgrounds. Unfortunately, this movie makes that almost impossible for much of the runtime. This is because in every talkie scene, the camera is focused in on the actor's face to the point that I feel like my personal space is being invaded, and the background is blurred to the point that it's just colors. These shots are also focused on faces. I'm starting to think they just had a really low pants budget and were trying to avoid showing the actors unmentionables. Meanwhile, the music drones on in the background. All the music that wasn't taken from some alt-rock band sounds like something a music theory student would write for an exam in 30 minutes. It's pretty much just string section whole notes. For God's sake, listen to some Philip Glass and try triplets or something. Seemed to work for him in the hours. It just drones on and on. I could compose something better, and trust me, I suck at composition, but at least I know not just to throw some random minor chords in there. The CG in this one is just awful. I mean, it was bad before, but this is the first movie where we really get to see the vampires get killed. Did you know that when vampires are killed, they look like broken marble statues? And apparently the Foley guy thought the best sound for vampire decapitation would be to break cheap ceramic pots in the ground. It's just hilariously mismatched. The first time I saw and heard it, I guffawed. I was almost rolling. It was almost as good as the running through the forest scene in New Moon. It's great. The horrible CG made vampire fights much more amusing, but not quite in the way I think they were going for. Also, the wolves are horribly CG'd as usual. By themselves, they're not badly done, but anytime they interact with a real object, you can tell how utterly insubstantial they are. They're horribly integrated into the scenes, even when they're just standing around. There's one shot where you get a side view of Bella standing next to Wolf Jacob, and it honestly looked to me like Bella's left side was immersed in Jacob's body because the integration was so bad. There's another shot where she pets him on the head, and you can see how badly the fur interacts with her hand. And it leads me to question, couldn't they have used a little bit of practical effects for those sort of scenes? I mean, couldn't they have taken a cheap piece of faux fur and had Bella pet it, and then integrated in the rest of the wolf around that scene? I mean, I don't know enough about CG to really get into it, so I won't. But let me tell you, the CG was to Sci-Fi Channel levels at some points. That's bad. Also, I think they're trying to phase out the whole sparkle pyre thing, because despite the pyres being in broad daylight for about half the movie, they never sparkle beyond the opening scene. Wow guys, good job trying to cover up that snafu. One of the things I'd like to point out is how completely unnecessary this entry in the series is. For a book over 600 pages long and a movie over 2 hours long, not a lot happens. There's just two main plot points. You've got Jacob becoming an asshole so that Edward and Bella will confirm each other as their one true loves, and two, tying up the loose end of whatever happens to Victoria, the red-headed bitch vampire. And even that's not a lot to justify this movie. And people will say, yes, there was a sexual tension, and oh, what about Bella and Edward getting engaged? But they were so predictable that I forgot at what points the whole engagement and marriage and abstinence subplots came in. I honestly thought they were engaged by the end of New Moon. I mean, weren't they? Am I crazy? I might be crazy, but I don't think it has anything to do with Bella Swan. This movie is also a shining example of one of my pet peeves in this series. Bella and Edward have absolutely no notable backstory or personality, but the side characters, especially the Cullens, are shown to have potentially interesting backstories. We see this in Rosalie and Jasper's backstories, but unfortunately we get the SparkNotes version. You may think that this was due to the movie needing to save time, but it's like this in the books as well. These vampires are all over a century old, and we never get more than a chapter's worth of backstory on any of them. Are you telling me in all that time they didn't do anything but go to high school? If that was the case, I would have gotten the Volturi to kill me a long time ago. Even worse is we get these little glimpses of these backstories that are infinitely more interesting, like Jasper's freaking vampire civil war, and they absolutely refuse to elaborate on them. I mean, I know this is supposed to be taking place in the present and be about Edward and Bella, but I don't think it would have hurt to include more of the side stories. Oh, and I love how in one scene Jasper's narrating about how he's near Galveston, and it shows him in the middle of the desert. As someone who spent 75% of their life in Houston, this left me and my friend in tears when it came on screen. Even if he was in Texas, he would have had to be about 500 miles to the west in Big Bend. I know the Texas coast is pretty developed nowadays, but I've seen better filming locations within 15 miles of Galveston they could have used. I mean, come on. And that's about it for Eclipse. I'm Aaron. This has been a review. I'm sure I missed plenty of stuff, so feel free to bits and bitch in the comments, and I'll try to respond as I can. See you later.